Today, we're diving deep into a really fundamental concept in business: how companies protect their most vital assets. We're going to explore the systems and procedures that basically form a financial fortress around a company's resources. All right, let's jump right in. So, let me ask you a question. What do you think is the biggest financial threat to a business? You might guess it's fierce competition or a big economic downturn, maybe even some new technology. But what if the real answer is something else entirely? That's right. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, but often the biggest risks come from within. We're talking about unintentional errors and, yeah, deliberate fraud. These things can silently undermine a company's financial stability, which is exactly why having a super robust internal defense system isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely non-negotiable. So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basic why. Why do businesses even need these controls? Then we'll break down the components of the system, see how they actually work in practice, apply them specifically to cash, and then wrap it all up with a really detailed real-world example. So, what are we really defending against here? Well, it turns out the conditions that lead to financial trouble are surprisingly predictable, and they're all captured in a neat little concept known as the fraud triangle. You see, fraud doesn't just happen out of the blue. It thrives when three specific things come together: pressure, like a personal financial need; rationalization, which is just justifying the act to oneself; and opportunity. Now, a company can't really control an employee's personal pressures or how they think, but the one thing it can and absolutely must control is the opportunity. That's the one piece of the puzzle a business can totally eliminate, and that's the entire point of internal controls. So to shut down those opportunities, companies build a really comprehensive system of internal control. You can think of it like the architectural blueprint for that financial fortress we talked about. And this blueprint, it's built on 5 critical interconnected components. This right here is the industry standard playbook. It all starts with the tone at the top, the control environment. Then you move on to assessing risks, putting specific control activities in place, making sure everyone's communicating clearly, and then constantly monitoring the whole system to make sure it's working. When they all work together, they give a company reasonable assurance that it's on the right track. Okay, let's zoom in on control activities. If the framework is the blueprint, then these are the actual walls, the gates, and the guards of the system. We're talking about the specific policies and procedures that form the real backbone of the entire defense. Now this is a biggie. It's arguably the single most important control activity there is. Just think about it. If the same person can approve a payment, record that payment, and get their hands on the cash, what's to stop them? Nothing. By separating these duties, you make it so that someone would have to collude with another person to commit fraud, which makes it a whole lot harder. And here's how you see these controls in the real world. It's not super complex stuff. It's simple, practical steps. Like every cashier gets their own drawer. You create a paper trail with pre-numbered invoices. You use basic physical security, safes, cameras, passwords, and you have a supervisor double-check the work. Every single step is another layer of defense. Now, all these controls are important everywhere, but nowhere are they more critical than when you're dealing with a company's most liquid, most desirable, and, let's face it, most vulnerable asset: cash. The main strategy for controlling cash is actually pretty simple. Get it out of the building and into a bank as fast as you can. That means payments are made by check or electronically, not with physical cash. And any cash that comes in gets deposited daily. Why? Because doing this forces an independent third party, the bank, to create a complete, separate record of all your cash activity. This dual record, that's the key to everything. So this whole dual record system leads us straight to one of the most critical control procedures in all of accounting: the bank reconciliation. This is where we get to play detective and solve the puzzle of why the company's records and the bank's records never seem to quite match up at first glance. So what are the big takeaways here? First, a solid internal control system is a company's #1 defense against errors and fraud. Second, the bank reconciliation is one of the most powerful, practical tools in that system because it forces accountability. And finally, it's important to remember this process provides reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. No system is perfect, and things like simple human error or people working together to cheat the system are always a risk. And all of this leaves us with a really interesting question to think about. Our current system is built on trust, which is then verified by processes like reconciliation. But as our transactions get faster and more automated, maybe even living on a blockchain someday, how are these fundamental principles of control and verification going to have to evolve to protect the businesses of tomorrow?